Hello, hi, welcome or welcome back to my channel, friends. My name is Rachel. If you are new here, I am a beauty, fashion, kind of a wellness enthusiast, if you will. I'm also an autistic woman, and I love sharing all things about those topics on the internet. Would love for you to stick around and subscribe if you are interested. However, today's focus is going to be very exciting. So I just hit 2,000 subscribers. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to dive into the celebratory nature of all of that in another video, because today we're going to be reviewing the new collection from Phytosurgence. This is the smoked collection. So if you're interested in Phytosurgence as a whole, I have a couple of videos that go in depth on the brand and the formulas. This is just going to be a video swatching and talking about them. I do have one in depth of all of the other Phytosurgence products I have owned, which includes the original blush line and the toasted collection. We'll do some comparisons today, but we'll get into that in a minute. I'm going to be doing face swatches just like the other video, so I put the same face of makeup on. I just have a little bit of the Kosas concealer to tamp down some redness so it doesn't play too much with the blush. And then some lip balm. You know, it's also allergy season, so my eyes, we're not adding a whole lot there. So while it may look crazy, the purpose of this video is to give you an idea of colors and swatches. So without further ado, let's dive right in. All right, so I do want to read the snippet from the website. I love their descriptions. I've always loved their descriptions, and to give us an idea of where this line is going to go. So this is coming 3 years after our Toasted Blush collection launched. We're finally adding the next roster of soft neutrals. So Phytosurgence is definitely a brand who's doing more beauty-focused makeup, more beauty-focused colors, so things that naturally exist on the face or in nature. Very, very lovely. The shades in this collection are meant to be softer and gentler, flowing from romantic rosy tones to touches of neutral brown and brick. We've also included a special touch of figurative smoke in this collection in the form of a gray blush that you can mix with any blush to make it more muted and moody. I mean, you know I love condensate, so this is like very exciting. Let's just get into this. I'm not going to swatch this straight onto my cheek, but I will swatch it on the back of my hand. And we'll get into some mixing in a little bit, but this is the dust shade, so it's just a cool gray. This is going to help tone. So I have a color theory video if you are interested, where we talk about tinting, shading, and toning colors. This is going to help you tone. Had to switch memory cards, so if you're interested in learning more about color theory and toning shades, go check out that video. But actually, why don't we go ahead and just do an example of toning. So I'm not going to be able to do full comparisons because I actually do need to reorder some of the shades that I've had for years because they're off. However, I'll do one just to show you an example of what this could do. So this is the shade Fervor, which is a very bright berry. And if I mix that with a little bit of the gray, so here I have, what are we calling this? Goodness gracious. Dust. I kept wanting to say smoke. It's the smoked collection. Dust is up here. Fervor is here, so it's a brighter kind of reddish pinkish berry. If I mix it with dust, it's going to give me this lovely muted berry tone, and it is going to lean cooler because it is quite a cool gray. But it's going to be an excellent tool for anybody, so you can mix this on the back of your hand and then apply. I honestly would just tap a couple of each color on the face and do it. So we might get into that. But again, some of my shades are off, and I just don't think it's a good idea for me to put them on my face. For an example of what this looks like next to Condensate, which is my favorite shade, here's where you're going to see the most difference. When you're adding dust, it is going to add a little bit of white pigment, I believe. I believe there's some white pigment in the base of that. So if you are very deep skin toned, you might want to be gentle with adding dust. But you can see Fervor turns into this kind of like cool plum. Evaporate has some dustiness to it, yes, but it's also a bit more kind of neutral and warm, especially on my skin tone, so you can kind of see them blended out. But if you're someone who really likes cool tones and you're looking for more cool tones, I think this is an excellent thing to have in your kit so that you can adjust colors. But that is dust kind of mixed with a couple of things. let's get into some cheek swatches. So I'm going to start lightest to dark, and we're going to do it just like I did in that other video. So this first one is going to be Steam, which right away I think I'm going to love because it is somewhat similar to Condensate, maybe just a little bit more rosy than kind of lavender gray. So again, I'm going to do the same thing where I add just a little bit of the formula and then we'll build it up. And my Phytosurgence brush is dirty, so I'm using a Beautypie brush today. But there is Steam. It is a beautiful, beautiful neutral rosy color. I'm actually very curious to see this one next to Condensate, but I want to show you them compared to each other first, and then we can talk about other shades. So I'm going to build this up a little bit. Excuse my brain farts. It's been a long work day. What's new? So there it is built up. You can see very rosy. There's definitely a bit of rosy brown to this, so it's not going to go like pink like a lot of roses typically do. You can kind of see in the pan it's definitely that burnished rose almost with brown. And then I'm going to wipe my brush off. Let's see it next to the other lighter of the 4 shades, which is Sear. These are right up my alley. I could swatch brown makeup for hours and hours, and not that these are brown, but they all have that earthy tone to them. So there's a light layer of Sear. This one's going to be a bit warmer. There's a touch of orange, not in a bad way, but when you compare it to the other. So let's build that up and then do a side by side. And I'm not being too ginger with this application. I just want you to be able to see as much of the color as possible. So there's the difference. On this side we have Steam and then Sear. Again, you can really see that this has a bit more warmth. So Sear, a bit more kind of orangish warmth within that rose, whereas this is more neutral brown, almost leaning cool. But again, you could cool either one of these off a bit with that dust shade. Both are stunning. All right, reconcealed. Let's dive into the bit deeper of the 4 shades, which is going to be Scorch and Incense. And this time, let's switch back and forth a little bit. So I'm gonna do a light layer of Scorch on this cheek. These just, if you're newer to the formula and you haven't gone back and watched the videos or you haven't seen my videos, this is such a gorgeous blush formula. It's a cream. It keeps a lot of the dewiness of your base underneath. Even if you're going to put this over matte, it's going to give you a tiny bit of dewiness, but they do have a little bit of a set down, so they're not tacky on the skin. They feel and look like a mousse. A dense, I would say dense creamy mousse in the package, but they blend out like an absolute dream. It is by far my favorite formula, and I've turned so many people in my day-to-day life onto this formula and a lot of other Phytosurgence products. They're just my top pick, and Condensate not only was in my top 15 of 2024, but it's been in my top every year that I've done a top product picks. And it is my most worn blush. Okay, so a light wash. There you have Scorch, which is almost like a tan, a warm tan rose. And then Incense is going to be a little bit deeper and a little bit more red, I think. There's some more tan in this. I'm very interested to read these descriptions because I've also noticed that the descriptions on the website are always spot on to how I see them in real life. So if you've been interested in looking at the other colors too, I've always found them to be dead on. Yeah, there's Scorch. Definitely more of like a bronzy tan with a hint of rose, especially compared to the first 2 that we did. And then let's build up Incense. This one's going to be definitely more of that terracotta brick. That's what my brain was looking for. Yep. Okay, so Incense, definitely more terracotta brick. It's warm, it's a little bit deeper. It's got some brown, but it's got some red. And then Scorch on this side is going to be much lighter. even with the pigment built up, it's gonna be much lighter, a little bit more of a tan rose rather than a terracotta. All right, so swatch on my hand, we have from top to bottom, steam, sear, scorch, and incense. And you can really see now, scorch has a bit more brown, whereas incense has a bit more red. These are gonna be the warmer of the four from what I can see. And then steam and sear are gonna be a little bit more neutral. I would say sear. Steam moves a tiny bit into cool, but for the most part, they're neutral. Phytosurgence does an amazing job of that. So if you are someone who things go really orange or things go really pink, this line's gonna be for you. It is very interesting, and I want to compare it against the Toasted collection because I thought the Toasted collection couldn't be beat, especially as someone who has kind of desaturated, more muted, not a lot of contrast in features. So let's do a couple from Toasted. Okay, so here's the four from the Toasted collection. We have Evaporate, Condensate, Exothermic, and Sublimate. So when you look at these, I would say that this collection is definitely kind of the muted rosy tan collection, whereas this you kind of get into some peaches, that lavender gray, and then Exothermic and Sublimate look like they would be perfect kind of within this collection. They're just a bit more deeper, and which one is this? Sublimate has a bit more red than some of these. These definitely live more in the kind of brown area. So this collection was meant to be Toasted versions of their original shades, which I cover in that video. This is meant to be kind of that rosy, taupey kind of shades, but there's a close-up of that. It is like all of these minus maybe Evaporate, that top shade, really could live together, and I think that's why I love this collection so much. I think there's something here for everyone, even if it's just digging into which undertone blended out might be best for you from this collection. Okay, now that we've covered the shades and a couple comparisons, I'll insert here. If there are specific comparisons you would like to see me do, let me know. If there's specific color combinations you'd like to see, let me know. But just for fun today, let's take Dust, and I'm going to wipe my brush off. And I'm just gonna dip into it lightly and see what happens when we add it right on top. Now, I doubt that this is how it's meant to be applied because it's meant to be mixed in with the shade of the blush, but I just want to see what happens when we do that on top. And you can see it, even when you blend directly on the face, it just blends right in. I love this blush formula so much. So you can see it just kind of tamped it down. I think you're gonna see much more of a difference on this side. So I'm gonna take just a touch of that, and I'm barely touching my brush to the pot, and then I'm wiping a lot of it off. Especially with this mixer shade, you're not gonna need much at all. Yeah, see how that, it just adds a little bit of that muckiness or that tone that I love so much, just to kind of bring it back down to earth and make it look a little bit more homey on my particular skin tone. So I probably should have mentioned that in the beginning. I have yellow green in my undertone. If you're new here, hi. So a lot of things go really vivid, but also pink and orange on me. So when I add something in to tone a shade down, it just makes it look so much more realistic. And I think when you add this to a lot of these shades, you're gonna get a flavor of condensate like I showed before. It's not gonna be exactly the same, but if condensate is your favorite shade like it is mine, this is gonna be a game changer because now any and all shades can become not condensate, but condensate adjacent. So if you like this shade, while it is not exact, this is gonna be a key tool in your arsenal to have. But that said, I don't wanna kind of belabor this video too much. I wanted to get the swatches out for you. I love these blush shades so much. So the last thing that we want to do is go through pricing and all of that important stuff. So Phytosurgence is a Canadian brand. It is $21 per blush Canadian, which is about $15.14 US. Amazing. I use condensate almost every day, and I have yet to fully empty one because you need so little and it's very buildable. So you can really customize the amount of pigment that's on your face. So now they have 15 shades, including the Dust Gray Blush Changer shade. I also think this would go so hard as like a zombie makeup blush or contour, but we're not quite to Halloween yet, although I'm very excited for it. And they do recommend that it pairs best with the Sky Fluff or Small Quill brushes. I love both of those. Both of mine are dirty. That's how much I love them. Any kind of synthetic blending brush will do. You kind of want medium flexibility here, so a little bit of density, but not too much. They blend in very easily. I've used them with fingers. I've used them with a sponge. It all works beautifully because it is such an agreeable formula and such a beginner-friendly formula. Dust on the top there is a cool gray. Steam second is a faded rose. I agree very much. There's definitely the most rosiness to me in that one. The rest get more into a bit of a bricky red almost. Sear is a rosy beige, so that third swatch there, I agree with that. You do get a lot more brown, like I mentioned in that, and it's not necessarily a strong brown. I agree with beige is probably a better descriptor there. Then underneath that you have Scorch, which is a dirty maple with a low white base. So they do call out on their website if there's a white base. That's if you have a deeper skin tone, it might look a little bit light on you or a bit ashy. I agree with maple. It really is kind of like maple syrup. It's got like amber, a bit of red. So I don't think it's orange necessarily, but like an ambery color to it almost. And then Incense on the bottom there is a rich, cool brick. So I think I got all my descriptions right. I swear they are the best at describing their shades. I've never had a discrepancy in kind of how my eye sees it to what they describe it as. So those are all the shades. They're beautiful. You can see they blend out like a dream with very little effort. They don't look muddy. They're just beautiful, and they just end up looking like skin. Even with gray on top, which I know if Jason or Tom see this, they're probably like, that's not how you should do it, but it still looks really nice. You can probably get ahead of yourself with adding gray, but also that could be your vibe too. So no one's here to police how much gray that you want to put in there. The last thing I will say, and I could kick myself for not grabbing swatches, is I did swatch this new collection on my very deep neutral friend, who is probably like an 8.5 in Danessa Myricks. These pulled not quite as well as some of the original shades. And that was the case with Toasted and Smoked. She really loved, she actually ended up going with Smolder, I think, which was very interesting, which is a much more orangey color. But yeah, also check out their Instagram. They have all skin tones showcasing these colors, and they look beautiful on all skin tones. But also check out on their website, they do list if they have a little bit of white pigment. Jason and Tom have always done an exceptional job with shade ranges, especially with the blush and bronzer. So I can't rave about these enough. I'm so excited to get this up and hear your thoughts on the new collection. Are you going to be picking it up? What shades are you going to be picking up? And do you love rosy brown cosmetics too? Because that's where my heart sings. I don't know. But I hope you're doing well. We will be back to more chatty content very soon. If you're new here, thanks for hanging out. I do videos like this every once in a while. We dive into different topics, but all the Phytosurgence videos will be linked below, and I will see you hopefully in the next one. Bye.